and I'll be having a conversation with someone who may not be familiar with my research, and they'll be like, I've worn this top 3 times. 3 times. Yeah. And I only washed my sheets once last week. And I'm like, backstory.
I can't think of any more human activity than conducting science experiments.
The game I play is a very interesting one. It's imagination in a tight straitjacket.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together.
What I always think should be the basis of education is not answers, but questions. We should teach kids how to question. Welcome to BLab. Today on the podcast we have Dr. Holly Kaye-Smith, who is an academic and a social change activist. I think that's a really cool title.
Thank you. Took me a couple of years, but I got there in the end.
Most academics just go for what discipline are you in? And we're on our way out here and we go, oh man, what discipline does Holly like? What is she in? But yeah, that's better. Just screw the disciplines.
I know, and I draw on so many disciplines. Interdisciplinary, that's the thing now.
That's what we're trying to push as well. Now, what is a social change activist before we get into the journey? I think it'd be good to just give us an idea of what that is.
A social change activist, to my mind, because it is something that I kind of invented to coin and explain what I do, is basically capturing people's interest, educating them and getting them to capitalise on everyday life activity as a form of activism, something I call everyday life activism.
Yeah, nice. Now, how did you get on this path? What inspired you to go down this path? Because you've done a PhD, you've gone down the road of research, and you create a lot of content as well. What was the impetus to what started you on this journey?
I have always been a passionate conservationist. I've been, rescuing and rehabilitating animals my whole life. Volunteering for charities and things to helping people in need. So I've always had that kind of an interest. But growing up, and I'm a very passionate person. And growing up, I would learn about issues of the world from documentaries and news stories and things like that. And I would feel so devastated at the wrongdoings that are going on with, whether it be animals or people or whatever. But I found that a lot of times, you'd learn about one of these problems, and then you'd finish watching a documentary or learning about it, and you'd just be like completely exhausted and drained of emotion, feel completely devastated because you're like, the world is fucked. Oh, am I allowed to swear? Yeah. It's like the world's screwed. Big head people up there which are untouchable. There's nothing that we can do to try and stop them, and that's it. And you just finish and you go, well, what's the point in that? And so that's why I wanted to investigate ground up strategies for change and create media where we learn about a problem, but then we go, what can I do about it? And then implement those things immediately.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because when I was in my undergrad in science, I did a unit, I'm pretty sure it still exists, called Integrated Science. And that was all about how scientists can be involved in creating change.
Awesome.
And I love that unit. It was great. Did some social media stuff and things like that in it as well. But it was very top-down focused. So it was all about how scientists could be involved in shaping government policy and things that have to be balanced when policymakers make decisions and things like that. So how is that different from your area of expertise, which you just mentioned is this bottom-up approach?
I think that we need to be seeing people attacking problems from every angle. So, from the ground up, people from the top down, excellent. Everyone needs to be working in every kind of area. But, this idea of ground up strategies for change, it's very empowering when people begin to be creative in their own lives and implement things in their day-to-day activities that they can also influence other people to create that broader change. It's a lot more doable, and it's quite empowering, and people can start small, and then it gradually takes over, and you take on more, you become more empowered, you become more skilled, and then you can take on bigger and better projects.
You know what's interesting? You were saying when you watch those documentaries, you get fatigued because the problem seems so overwhelming that, like, as an individual, what could I really do? Like a good example is climate change. Like, what could I really do as an individual? But if everybody just makes small adjustments in their behavior, we can make a meaningful impact on how we address this issue.
100%.
And it's just interesting because I was just watching a video the other day on Kony 2012.
Yes.
And that, like, when I was thinking about this interview, I'm like, that social change from ground up, as weird as that movement was, but I think it was the first time that happened where people saw the power that social media has in creating these sort of movements.
And that movement, I mean, Kony 2012, it was a very controversial thing, and it's had a lot of ridicule. And I actually feel for the guy a little bit because, he ended up going nuts, and they got the video footage of him, like, in his undies going crazy.
No, he was butt naked.
Yeah, butt naked. Okay, so I don't think that he ever intended to do anything to hurt anyone. And it was just, he was not very educated in what he was pressing for, but then it got taken up by a global movement. But what he did was some of the fundamental things that we need to do when we communicate for social change and action. So he pinpoints the idea, then he says the solution, what we can do to change it, and then he shows people, he emphasizes the collective citizen action. He shows this body, this movement of people that are all like, Kony 2012, we're all in this, we're buying our wristbands and we're liking these posts. And everyone's like, I want to be in that movement. And so rather than fear stoking, it's this uplifting, come on, join us, we can do it. And everyone's like, yeah, I'm going to follow you because I'm a follower. And ultimately that didn't really lead to any good change, but it was a really good model to show you how we can communicate and then get people involved and to act.
Sounds interesting because it's like, what it sounds like to me is really the trick is making people kind of feel like they have power.
Yes,
and I guess
one of them, definitely.
I guess this kind of like aligns with two things. One, like Hamid was just mentioning before, people feel powerless for these really big issues. So giving them that sense of power makes them feel like they can do something.
Yep.
But also the effectiveness of social media. So is this like, are these bottom-up approaches becoming more of a social media thing, or?
I think, so there's two things that I want to pick up on there. And the first one was talking about empowering people. And to relate this to climate change, this is where we've fallen short in these conversations about climate change, because it's been doom and gloom, apocalyptic messages, because it's true. Like, if we don't do anything, there are going to be frightening things that will happen, and we're going to have to very quickly change the way we do things to save as many lives as possible, ultimately. I mean, we're already seeing, refugees, people whose islands are going under and all that kind of stuff. But with all of these apocalyptic messages in the media, trying to prove to people you've got to be so scared, and because we've got to change something. And yes, that is correct. And you've got idiots that are like, I mean, I don't know. I have never met anyone who doesn't believe in climate change. But yeah, so you get,
Not face to face. I've had discussions with them on the internet.
No, I've had plenty of contact with people who don't believe in climate change.
I haven't.
It's a hoax, bro.
Oh,
it's just the governments, the Illuminati. They want to make money off it.
I know. And it's like, actually, I did have a conversation with someone who did kind of say that, and they were like, oh no, it's like, the ploy of scientists and all this kind of, and I'm like, I work with scientists at a uni, and what benefit do you think they're going to get by saying something that's going to challenge the government? Like, other way around, mate. Anyway, I don't have contact with many people that are climate change skeptics, but this idea that we still have to try and prove that it's real. It's like millennials. I'm working on a new campaign at the moment. We're targeting millennials and getting them empowered. They're not asking that question. They're just like, holy crap, we're gonna die. Like, that's it. You know, we're already, you know, there's no way that we could reduce stop the temperature rising, you know, 2 degrees. Apocalyptic. There's nothing I can do.
The baby boomers have screwed us.
Yeah. There's nothing I can do, and there's this real sense of like apathy and complete like almost acceptance. Like when I've talked to people about a project that I did, like washing their clothes less, and I hear people talking about their clothes that are made in sweatshops, and one of the respondents in my study said, "Oh yeah, but you always wash clothes when you get them from the shops, but especially if it's my kids' clothes, because you know they'd probably be on the floor at sweatshops, and you don't know what kind of germs." And I'm like, did we just like skim over the fact that we're completely exploiting, you know, poor, you know, women in these third world countries? Like, like now it's just so accepted. My clothes are from a sweatshop. I don't want to catch any diseases from that, rather than thinking about changing. And it's a similar thing with climate change. You know, like everyone's just like, oh my God, we're doomed. And there's nothing I can do, and I can't change anything. And people like Trump are going to ruin the world anyway, so why bother? And if you rephrase things in that Kony way, where you show that collective citizen action, and you also don't want to be guilting people into things. They have to do it because they want to participate. They feel good. And so that's another thing. Like, these strategies have to be applied to doable initiatives. Like you have to think about those and work on those really well, and then communicate them in a way that makes people want to be involved. So that was one thing. What was the other part that I wanted to say?
Was it the social media side was the other part that I mentioned. So making people feel empowered, but also the success of these bottom-up campaigns with the popularity and the increasing use of social media.
Yes. Well, the exciting thing about now is that never before in the history of mankind have we been less reliant on commercial broadcast to get a message out there. So, you know, with all the like problems, I think it was Murdoch that had his own paper, and some journalist was like, you know, I want to write this story because this is the truth. And he's like, when you get your own paper, you can write that story, but now you're not reporting on that. So never before in the history of mankind have we been able to communicate to a broad audience freely, and that's the internet. So right now we have the power to get the collective citizen action that we need to keep pushing that message forward and change behaviors. And then with that power too, you know, people up the top, like fast fashion outlets, they're never going to, they make up to, 24 fashion cycles a year. Every 2 weeks they put new floors, like new clothes on the floor, and wipe out old ones. This went from, it used to be winter and summer, and then it went to like 12 seasons a year, and then it went to 24 seasons a year. And so, but they're making so much money from people running in there, wearing something 2 or 3 times. They're designed to withstand less than 10 washes. But who cares? Because you're only going to wear it once or twice. So you buy these things, you chuck them on, then you get another thing, and they're making so much money. You make more money doing that than you would doing designer Gucci bags. So they're never going to go, oh, well, you know, I suppose this isn't that great for the environment, and I'm feeling pretty bad for the people that I'm making put these clothes together in these sweatshops. They're never going to do that. The only way that they will stop doing it is if their consumers change their minds. And with consumer power, I prefer to say citizen power, because I think that we need to step away from this idea of, you know, just being consumers. But you know, we have the opportunity in a lot of cases to show them what we want. And even if they don't really want that, and at first they might be like, yeah, oh, we're totally, like, you know, with the battery chickens, you know how they were having free range eggs, and some of my friends were like, well, I've had a couple of people say, they've proven that there isn't enough battery chicken, there aren't enough free range eggs to accommodate all of the demands, and so now they're just using the battery chicken eggs and they're putting in the free range eggs. So I don't want to be a part of that. And I'm like, screw that, man. No way. You'd be like, if they don't have enough supply for demand for free range eggs, great, because they're going to be wiping out the battery chickens because they're like, they don't even want this anymore. So they're just going to go for the bigger dollar. But we can have influence, and even if it takes them a little while to warm into, oh, that's what they want, and we've got to give the customer what they want, it'll be a little bit of a transition period, but it does create change.
It's amazing how capitalism kind of underpins all of this, right? Unless there's a financial incentive, many of these companies won't change their behaviors, and then
I guess that's where the power of the bottom-up approach comes in, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you change the customer base of these companies, then that has a in turn effect on their, they want to appeal to their customer.
And it's also like going bottom up, you're changing the culture.
Yes.
And I think that's really important. You're changing people's values. You could potentially change their values.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Alex on the way about capitalism and how human beings are so screwed because it's like as human beings, we've been conditioned to value money over human flourishing.
Yeah.
And so we allow these giant companies and governments to just screw people over just so we can make some more money. And that's really screwed.
And it's interesting when you look at advertising campaigns and things because all they're doing is tapping into an emotion and then associating a product with that emotion. So, whether it's, a Chevy with its top down and someone like with, the scarf wrapped around their face and flapping in the wind. And that's implying freedom and adventure and all of these things. But all they're doing are tying these things that we can actually have for free to a consumer good.
Yeah. They're going underneath the logic and just like, what do you call
They're
it?
just appealing to the reptilian
The
brain,
prime,
right?
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like even down to like if you look at washing detergent, I was reading for my PhD. I was doing research into the fifth World Detergent Conference. I know, right? You're just like, you're like, oh god, this is gonna be good. Coffee. Anyway, I was like learning about how they infiltrate a new market, and they said, and they were celebrating this. Like I was reading this, just going, oh my god, I want to burn you guys at the stake. Like it was so evil, and they were celebrating it. Someone going in there and saying, this is how we got a new target market. They're called LIC, low income consumers. And these are poverty stricken Latino and African Americans who earn less than $2 a day, how they can infiltrate that circle because they haven't yet and get them to buy fabric softener. I know. And so they got their marketing people. See, this is the thing. They do want to know what we want and what we value. So it does change the way that they do things. But anyway, they got these people to infiltrate the community, and they come back with, these quotes and values of them. Like we might be poor, but we still have pride in our family. Anyway, so then they curtail a whole advertising campaign where these people are so poor that they can't even buy a bottle of fabric softener. They go, we'll make these small satchels, and you'll be like, hey, on a special occasion, you can get 2 special occasions out of that. I know, doesn't that blow your mind? I'm like, these people don't need fabric softener. They need immunizing. They're in poverty. They need an education. And these are the priorities. But again, it's learning what your consumers want and accommodating that.
Maybe we should move on to because that's a nice segue into your Pits for the Planet, Smell My Pits for the Planet campaign. So I'm just going to leave it there. Tell us about it. Yeah.
So, obviously, as usual, I have to take you on a little journey first. So, when looking at the fashion system, there's so many resources go into clothes, and rightly so. We're like, oh my god, my pair of cotton pants will require 15,000 liters of water to just grow the cotton, the 1 kilo of cotton, and then you've got the travel, the dyes, they're all of these, it's huge ecological impacts on these kinds of things. So that's a problem. And then you've got the disposal of them, and we've got microsynthetic fibers entering the food way from washing our clothes, and the plastic waste in our aquatic life, and then things becoming toxic, and the landfill and chemical leaching and all this kind of stuff. So that's a big problem. Everyone's like, oh wow, it's such a huge problem. But up to 82% of a garment's total environmental impact happens during the use phase when you wash your clothes. So all the all the water and the chemicals and that's where the microsynthetic fibers are released. The fabric softeners, all of that. And even when you think about the white goods that we use, the washing machine, and I don't know when you see those breaking, and sometimes it does look pretty hilarious when they chuck a brick in and then it makes it go. But so many resources went into that. Everything from your clothesline, your pegs, your dryers, all this kind of stuff. So I needed, and the reaction to this is always, because we are from a consumerist model, whenever there's a problem, what do? Oh my gosh, we're spreading a lot of chemicals from washing our clothes. We better make some detergent that doesn't have as much chemical fillers. And our washing machines are using so much water. What do? Redesign our washing machines. Quick, throw away the old ones, creating lots of waste, and then create these new ones that use less water. Like this knee-jerk consumer reaction. But if only 7%. Only 7% of the clothes that we wash are actually dirty. So 93% of the clothes that we wash aren't dirty. So we're just washing out of habit rather, and routine rather than necessity. I'm not talking about like your undies and stuff. I mean, like, sometimes you might be able to get a second wash out of your shirt, second wear out of your shirt. Yeah. And if we could just get one extra wear out of our clothes, the laundry burden is halved, and that's with no new products or infrastructure. But getting people to wash less delves on societal perceptions of cleanliness. And the reason that we wash our clothes and the reason that we wash or clean anything has more to do with a multi-trillion dollar detergent industry than it does about being dirty or clean. So in tackling this issue, I need to get people to wash their clothes less, but I need to change their perceptions of washing less to not being a shameful, oh, you're dirty and lazy, to being, if you're thrifty and you're smart, man, you can cheat a wash. And what are your tricks? So I designed ways to refresh your clothes that don't involve a washing machine. And then I tested them on my clothes and cut the armpits of those clothes to a sniff board. And then I hit the streets of Sydney with a camera crew and a megaphone to ask random people, will you sniff my pits for the planet? And I was like, and the most shocking thing for me, I thought that I was just going to be like chasing people with armpits and but people did it. Yeah. Like, I was on public buses, I got kicked out of markets, and people would they just thought it was the most hilarious, fun game. Yeah. And they would literally, I mean, I'd been only 24 hours earlier on a push bike, going as hard as I can, sweating on some gym clothes, and then had it off and it was barely dry, and put it to the board and sprayed it with some lemon. And these people are blanketing their whole face and nose and mouth and taking this almighty whiff. And I'm standing there frozen with my sniff board thinking, part of me is going, this is fucking fantastic. And the other part going, oh my God, I know my sweat is on that. So it was quite confronting, and I learned a lot from my own experience as well as getting people. But then people opened up and talked about, how do you cheat a wash? What do you do? Some people chuck it in the sun, some people over a chair, or put it on a hanger in the shower. And it got this conversation. The video that I made from that became this discussion point which I would use for case studies and conferences and things like that, which portrayed washing less as this fun, clever activity that also implied that everyone else is already doing it. So you want to get into that community. Yeah. People talking about how they cheat a wash. And it was positioned in a way that was, it completely repositioned. The reaction that I got from that kind of goes against a lot of the literature that I'd been reading, because everyone's like, oh, societal perceptions of cleanliness. Oh, what are we going to do? And governments in England and all this kind of stuff, they're like, how do we get people to wash less, and then turn it into a positive, fun activity, and then everyone just jumps on board. Much to my It took me a little while to
smell my pits.
Yeah.
It's amazing because it really shows the power of, like you were saying before, of that ground up approach when you give people the tools and the power to say, look, here's a simple thing you can do, like cheat a wash, right?
Yeah.
And then
get
help
a bonus
the planet.
wear, you know?
Exactly.
But it's also, again, it's addressing the subliminal stuff, the emotion, connecting new emotions, new perceptions to washing your clothes.
Absolutely.
Just basically doing what the companies do to get you to buy money. But
exactly.
you're kind of doing the opposite in reverse to get people to stop spending money on stuff they don't need to spend money on, and instead change their behavior.
Exactly. And with that, it's I see people go through different phases when they're encountering this new idea of, whoa, let's wash less. But so it's quite funny. I'll be chatting to someone. I've had numerous times I've had people run up to me who I've never met before but have seen me talk somewhere, and they're like, and I'll be having a conversation with someone who may not be familiar with my research, and they'll run up and they'll be like, I've worn this top 3 times. 3 times. Yeah. And I only washed my sheets once last week. And I'm like, backstory. Okay. but people getting used to this kind of idea. Like they go, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Like, tell me about these techniques that you use. Yeah. And it's more about changing the perception than the techniques. The techniques were just an excuse to get talking. Right. But you know, someone will always say, but what happens if my clothes are dirty? And I'm like, well, then you wash them.
You don't have to cheat one wash.
Yeah, you don't cheat everyone.
Has anyone come up to you randomly and said to you, I haven't washed my clothes for a whole year?
Well, there's a lady that's done that. There's a lady that did that, actually, little brown dress. But my niece, she thought my video and that thing was so hilarious. And we'd be walking through the shops and she'd be like, Auntie Hoey, sniff my pits. And I'm like,
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Let's transition into Earth IQ. Tell us about that.
So this is a really exciting campaign that's going on, and it's I mean, I can talk mostly to my contribution to this, but it's a bunch of academics and who specialise in areas of like conservation and climate change and things like that, and then also students who want to get involved and educated and be proactive. And basically the objective, or for what I can tell from my angle, is you know, getting millennials educated and understand what's going on, so that they, you know, because we need people to be, you know, moving towards, you know, political veins and all this kind of stuff, but also giving practical advice on what they can do to, you know, everyday life activism, you know, communicating for social change and action. So it's really empowering millennials so that we can start to redirect the path that we're on right now, because the people that have got it covered so far are not doing a terribly good job. So
exactly. Need to make sure that the next wave is kind of like got the right idea.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so what sort of things are you guys encouraging them to do?
It's at the very initial stage at the moment, and it's a very responsive campaign too. So I'm in the process of making some videos for it, but it is social media and online, so we can get it's very much growing with feedback, so that we can, you know, I'm curious to see what questions pull in and the angles and the interest and the challenges that come in, so that we can respond to those rather than just you know, premeditating what we're going to give them. But areas of interest are very much like cooling your home, you know, what you can do, because, I mean, we have, you know, McMansions now, just down the road from me. There's all of these huge houses that got put up, and the space in between them, it's just a concrete jungle, and they've got like space like this. I saw one of them had, I mean, maybe it's fine, I don't really know, but it was, you know, plastic turf. And it's just going to be so hot. Yeah. Like all that stuff, we take away plants and, you know, we're not building houses in the direction so that we're like, oh, that room's going to be cool in summer and this is going to be. So we really need to start thinking about practical ways so that we can cool our homes and cool our cities and, you know, stuff like that, really practical things. But then also understanding different academics will have different areas that they can specialise in. I was talking to, oh my gosh, and I feel terrible because I can't remember the academic's name. We can maybe put it up as a super later. But I want to do this video about space junk. Like he's using these cameras to counteract this problem. But he's like,
Greg.
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
he's like, you know, space junk. It's a problem.
We had him on the podcast actually.
Isn't he fantastic?
Yeah, we did.
And I'm like, I've got to do this because in 5 years, like, we might not be able to get out of Earth because we've got so much junk. And this is a really great example of what we're doing that we can get people interested in, and it'll need similar, you know, strategies so that we can kind of undo that problem. But when I saw him talking. I was interviewing him for another project, and he's like, space junk, it's a problem, and I was like, you're blowing my mind. What do you mean it's a problem? Oh, and so cool stuff, interesting things and practical things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's cool.
Cool.
Well, we've hit our time limit. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, thank you for being on. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, are there any websites that you want to plug or anything?
Oh God, well, go on to Earth IQ on Facebook. I think they're on Insta and various other things, but that would be the one to watch and see what happens there.
Any personal ones that you want to?
I'll probably stick with that one for the moment. Although we do have a. Oh no, that's all I'm going to say because
We can put up any links you want to.
yeah. And then I was going to say, you know, what, like one of the rules when you are working in television and all that kind of stuff is you never ground something in time. So I was about to say this Friday we've got a greening wall at Parramatta South, but that will ground it in time and become irrelevant.
We'll release this beforehand, before that anyway.
Yeah.
But check out Earth IQ.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Holly.
Time. Thanks.
Thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Tom. You named your time.
Thanks, time.
You know what threw me? It was one of those things where I was going to say thanks for your time, Holly, and then you said Holly, and my mind did like one of those backflips where just gibberish came out.
You can blame it on that, dude. But I think you're just getting old.
I'm just getting
man.
old. Yeah. It happens more and more.
Wise. You're getting wise.
He's hitting 49.
Yeah. It's true, guys.
Thanks, guys.